Today we're going to teach you how to cast with 2 rods like an idiot. That's actually so much fun. Now we all want to cast a bit further, so today I'm going to give you a few quick tips. It's going to help you reach out and touch that fish. Now there's 2 sides to this. There's the gear side and there's the technique side. First up, I'm going to go through some gear that's going to help you cast further, then we'll look at some technique within the casting. Now first up, what I want to talk about is shooting heads. Now a shooting head is a little bit different than your normal fly line. You've got a very thin mono, or what we call a shooting line. This is the Rio grip shooter. This thin running line shoots through the guides really easily and provides very little friction to cast further. Now on the end of that running line, we've got what's called a shooting head. Now this is a very fat piece of fly line. It's a very short, fat piece of fly line. It's got a lot of weight to it. Now this joins to our running line with a loop-to-loop connection, and this is a big lump of weight at the end of the fly line. Think about a spinning rod. You've got really thin mono or braid and a big lump of mass, a big sinker or a lure. You huck it out there, there's very little friction with the line and it shoots way out there. This is the same idea. Very thin, frictionless running line with a nice fat bit of fly line, and this is called a shooting head. This is going to give you the most distance. If you just want plain old distance, you're in the surf or you're on a lake. I've got a 2-hander here, but this comes in you can use this in the single hand world as well. This is your maximum distance. So if you just want to cast as far as you can, shooting head with a shooting line. Now there are a few disadvantages. If we strip off the line here, you can see this mono or this grip shooter from Rio as well. It's very coily off the bat. You can combat that by stretching it out, but it's something to keep in mind. Another disadvantage is there's a loop-to-loop connection at the tip. So if you're stripping in and fishing, that loop's going to click through the guides and get a bit frustrating over the course of the day. But where this setup really shines is plain old distance. Now this is a 2-hander, which is mainly designed for casting spey or switch style, but if you use a single-hander, or you can still single-hand cast these, again if you're in the surf or something like that, and with a very quick pick up and lay down, you can shoot a lot of line as far as you want basically. That's the beauty of a shooting head. It's a very short pickup and bomb it out there. So that's your max distance setup right there, a shooting head with running line. Now next what I'm going to go through is integrated shooting heads or heavier weight forward fly lines. Now I've got a Rio Grande here on this 6-weight. There's a very aggressive front head on this line. Now what that's going to do, and the same is true with an integrated shooting head, there's no knot or loop to strip through the guide, so it's like handling a normal fly line. This running line is like normal fly line. It's a lot easier to handle. So you've got cold fingers, or it's just a bit easier to deal with. Short, aggressive front-headed fly lines are really good for quick pickup and shoot a lot of line. Shooting heads with running line and integrated shooting heads are not as good for presentation though. So if you just want max distance, you are going to sacrifice a little bit on presentation, but that is just the trade-off. What we're going to do now though is go into some technique that you can use with your normal trout setup to get a little bit more distance. So that's the gear side of things. If you want maximum distance, gravitate towards those setups. But most of us just want a little bit more distance with our normal trout setup. I've got a 9'5" weight here, and I'm just going to show you a few little things with your technique that we can change to maximize distance. The first thing, and something that quite often gets overlooked, is if we start peeling line off, like I briefly mentioned with the shooting head and the running line, this line tends to be a bit coily. So make sure if you're running distance, before you even start casting, give that line a good stretch. It's going to shoot through the guides a lot easier than when it's coiled up. So make sure you stretch that out before you start casting. With our general trout applications, we're going to be casting, let's say, within a rod length to maybe, 30, 40 feet maximum. But if we need a little bit more distance, the first thing we can change is our stance. Now with our accuracy presentations with trout casting, we tend to either stand pretty square or even with your dominant foot forward and cast firmly up and down. That gets a really accurate cast. Rod stops at your ear, you're looking straight down the rod, even placing your finger on top to get a really firm pick up and lay down cast or false cast with a lot of accuracy. What tends to happen though when we start casting further with this stance is we sort of get limited by our range of motion. If I'm trying to throw a ball as hard as I can, I'm not going to stand with my right foot forward and throw it like this. What I'm going to do is open my stance up, come right back here and throw it as hard as I can. We're not going to throw a fly rod, but this same open stance is going to help us get more distance. If we look at our range of motion for our arm now with our right foot forward from our normal trout presentation, I've got about up to here. If I start leaning back here with my right foot forward, it gets a bit stuck. So if I open my stance up, I can have a longer, what we call stroke length, And like that ball analogy, I can open my casting stroke or my casting arc up quite significantly. That's going to help us get more distance. If I open my casting stroke up like that, so you can see the arc of how wide my rod's traveling. There is a caveat to this open stance though. You can't just open your stance up and start throwing and flailing away as hard as you possibly can. There's no substitute for good technique. So again, leading with the butt of the rod, a firm stop at the forward cast and back cast without doming the rod tip over the top like this, because that's not going to help us at all. Firm stops on the forward cast and the back cast while also opening that casting arc up is going to get you more distance. Still need that rod tip to travel in a straight line path, and if we start doming that rod tip over the top like this with our long casting stroke or arc, we're going to open that loop shape up and it's going to be even worse. So again, keeping that rod tip nice and straight, creating a nice tight loop, really opening that stance up and extending behind you and in the forward cast. Once we've sorted our stance out and we're casting with a nice wide arc, again with good technique, we're going to look at double hauling. So double hauling is a whole nother topic in itself that we'll go through later, but just a brief overview. As our line or our rod is traveling for our back cast, I'm simultaneously pulling the line in my offhand, in which case is my left. What that does is as that rod travels back, if I pull the line in my offhand, this rod loads and bends even more than I would just get with my single hand. If we create more load by hauling that line in our opposite hand, more load equals more line speed. More line speed equals more distance. So double hauling, and because it's called double hauling, you obviously do it on the back cast and the forward cast, looks sort of something like this. So as our line goes back and forward, I'm pulling the line with my offhand, pull, pull, and you can see that rod and that line is traveling much faster than if I just go with my single hand. So if I've got this much line out and I'm only using one hand, I can get it going pretty fast, but give a little haul, and with much less effort, I can shoot all that fly line. All I'm doing with double hauling is adding more load into the rod, more line speed, and ultimately more distance. Now I know I was talking about gear before, but I'll just go through one more thing with line selection for your specific trout setups. It's really important to look when you're purchasing a fly line for your rod to look at the head length. Now the reason we look at head length when purchasing a fly line is it determines how much line we can carry in the air or aerialize. Let's say I've got a 40-foot head on this fly line. That means I can only aerialize or carry 40 feet of fly line out the tip of my rod in a false cast before I then need to shoot. The reason that is if I carry or aerialize more than the head, the line isn't then doing its job and loading the rod properly. The reason we have weight forward fly lines is so we can cast and aerialize that weight forward and then shoot the running line. So let's say I wanted to make a 60-foot cast and I've got a 40-foot head on my fly line. So I get 40 feet out of the tip of the rod or just under, and then use our hauls to get 40 feet out. Once I've got the entire head out of the fly line, I then shoot the running line. That's how you can maximize distance, is really use the line to your advantage and not overstretch, aerializing 70 foot of fly line when you've only got a 30-foot head. It's not going to work too well. So again, if you've got a 30-foot head, you only aerialize 30 foot with your hauls, longer stroke length, and shoot the rest. With a longer head, you can aerialize or carry more, and that's how you're going to maximize your distance. So there you have it. There's a few quick tips on how you can maximize your distance with fly casting. Look at your gear, look at your technique with opening your stance and fly line construction and things. And yeah, throw some line.